So here's the side that goes onto the head, and here's the side that goes onto the airbox. Now this side goes in pretty easy. You don't have to really do too much. You got to stretch it on a little bit and just make sure the clamp is nice and tight so it doesn't pop off when you hit bumps and stuff. This side that goes onto the airbox, I had to actually take I took a Dremel with a flap disc, sanding flap disc, and opened up the rubber boot a little bit on the 4-take snorkel, on the 400X snorkel, and I was able to stretch it on. It's actually a little bit of a pain to stretch that on, but you get it on, and just make sure the clamp is nice and tight. What also helps is to get a heat gun and warm up the rubber snorkel. It'll stretch on a little easier. A heat gun, if you don't have a heat gun, a hair dryer, or you could even take that rubber snorkel off and put it in hot water to make it a little more easy to get on there. Okay, so you got that. You got to use a 450R throttle cable. That'll fit in the 400EX throttle housing. You need to plug your hot start. Now you can't just put silicone in there. You have to actually plug. It's better to get the plunger for it, but you could plug it with silicone or RTV, Honda Bond. But you have to make sure that when you do, the silicone comes out and plugs this also. Otherwise you'll still have an air leak and you'll never get your jetting right. Like I said, it's easier to get the plug for it. I used the factory 450R hot start plunger. I put it in there and just put some Honda Bond where the cable would go on the plug itself. But that's really important. You have to make sure this has 0 leaks. What else do we have to do? Oh, the fuel hose. What you could get away with is just go to the auto store and use a 3/8 fuel hose. You have to stretch it on here, but you need to use 3/8 because the factory 400EX hose is way too small. There's no way you'll ever get it on here, and you have to use 3/8 because you'll be able to clamp that onto the 400EX petcock without leaks. If you have the standard hose for this carb, you'll never get it to seal on the petcock. And that's pretty much it. I mean, this is the TPS. You don't need this on the 400EX. You actually can't use that on the 400EX. You just leave that. And this one down here, this is actually a heater. You don't need that either. TPS, that's for ignition timing, electronic ignition timing, to advance or retard the ignition timing when it's at closed throttle, 8th throttle, full throttle, varies that. So you don't need that for the 400EX. And this is the heater. The purpose for the heater is to prevent icing. But unless if you're in the Arctic, you don't have to worry about that either. But that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple. You can't move your choke lever up and down, which kind of sucks. There's no room for it. But it has an accelerated pump, so that definitely helps when cold starting. And that's pretty much it. I'll make another video on how to jet them. These are pretty easy to jet. They're definitely much easier than the FCR to jet, and definitely much easier to install than the FCR is. But this is a huge power difference from the stock 400EX carb. So it's definitely worth doing, considering the price.